May it be new in our hearing and hearts this day. Amen. So today, the second Sunday of Lent, we move from Jesus in the wilderness to Jesus in the city. So he was in the Galilee region, bouncing around from village to village, doing what Jesus did at that time. He was healing folks. He was teaching. He was telling parables about the emergence of God's kingdom. And as he did this, he emphasized forgiveness. And he told people who thought they were beyond God's care, that they were outside God's circle, that they instead were right in the center. And one day as he was doing this, the Pharisees, who Jesus did not exactly have a peaceful, stress-free, friction-free relationship with, they came to him and they approached Jesus with a dire warning, and they said, Herod is out to get you. And this is no idle threat. Jesus knew it. So Herod's father, who was also named Herod, was the one who tried to kill the baby Jesus and issued an order for all baby boys to be killed in Bethlehem. We often skip that part of the story at Christmas time. Not Herod. This Herod took after his father and had recently beheaded John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin. Right? So why would this Herod want to assassinate a gentle, storytelling preacher who talked of nonviolence and forgiveness, who went around and healed sick people? What threat could Jesus have possibly posed that would make Herod take notice of him and want him dead? Any guesses?
Because he had been called king.
Who, what?
He had been called king.
Well, that's part of it, yeah. Some people had called Jesus a king. Herod didn't like that. I think it was in part because Jesus was a disruptor in his own way. Even though a lot of our pictures do like gentle Jesus, Jesus is with the children and all of that. We have to be clear that Jesus and what he did also had a really radical edge to what he was doing, right? What he was doing was revolutionary at the time. It was a big deal. And one thing that Herod could not tolerate was disruption. He did not like disruption. We know from sources that Herod and the emperor had a deal. And Herod's job was to keep things calm and orderly in that region. And as long as he did that, he would remain in power, and that means that he would be wealthy. He had a military force, he had economic power, he benefited from it. So Herod couldn't tolerate anybody who was stirring things up. It threatened his well-being, it threatened his bank account. And as we know, all leaders despise disruptions. So it's almost as if, remember, this one played the game Jenga, where you have, and I thought we had one home, couldn't find it, but you have that tower of blocks. That's like society that a ruler has built, and it's got all of these things interwoven. And it doesn't take much for somebody to move one of those blocks, especially one of the foundational blocks, for the whole thing to come crashing. And that's precisely what Jesus was doing. I mean, if we look with clear eyes at what he was doing, he was disrupting societal norms. Right? He crossed the lines of ethnic and national and tribal boundaries a lot. He looked at Samaritan people and said, they are the heroes of this particular story. He sat there with a Roman soldier and a sick child and healed them. There was a Syrophoenician woman, story we heard a few weeks ago, and he healed that child. He crossed over all of these boundaries that were part of the bottom layer of gender roles. And he disrupted religious traditions, which was part of the reason the Pharisees didn't like him. He pushed back against the words of his Bible at the time that said, if somebody's sick on the Sabbath, you just wait till the Sabbath is over before you call in a healer. And Jesus was like, no, Oh, you healed them on the Sabbath. And if somebody needed forgiveness of sin, he would do it, even though he was not a priest. So Jesus went around flicking all these jingle blocks, right? Nudging them so the whole tower was teetering. He talked about this new kingdom, a different kind of kingdom. And so those in power, whether they were religious people in power, they saw a threat. And so he receives this warning, and he doesn't back down. They say, Herod is looking for you. He's out to get you. And Jesus replies to the Pharisees and says, you go tell that fox that I'm going to keep doing what I am here to do. Healing, teaching, turning what is messed up into society. And in this passage, Jesus indicates that he's on his way to Jerusalem, which was where Herod's power was at. And Jesus looks at the holy city and laments. Right? He laments that the elites and other people in Jerusalem don't want to hear what he has to say. And that they seem to be resisting what he's asking of them. They put to death prophets and disruptors. So that's where we join Jesus today. With the Pharisees, giving him a warning. And then he turns his attention to Jerusalem. So what do we think he's cultivating? Any thoughts, any ideas?
Tolerance.
Tolerance. For who?
For those who have different ideas.
Yeah. I can see where you're coming from.
Sounds like he's looking to make good trouble.
Good trouble. Yeah, I think so. I think part of what he's cultivating is a willingness to be a disruptor, to embody a different way of being that's good for all and not just good for some. In modern vernacular, we call that good trouble. Not shrinking away when the opportunity came. He could have, if you got a warning that somebody really powerful was like, Andy Bill Gates got to get here. You're going to stand up to it, or you're going to sneak away and be like, yeah, you don't have to. Anything else that you see that he's cultivating?
He was woke before woke was a thing.
He was woke before woke was a thing. Yeah. I preached on this, but folks, it drives me crazy how that word has been constructed. To be woke is not a bad thing, honestly. It literally just means awakened. And it comes out of the Black church. And it's been around, I'm afraid it's been around for a long time. And actually it means that you're awake and aware of people's injustice and pain and suffering. That's what it means. It means that you're not a sociopath who is only interested in yourself. It means that you can look at other people who are not like you. Different religion, different color, different gender, different sexual orientation, different economic status, different educational status from another part of the country, another part of the world, and be able to look at them and say, there's a lot of differences in their life. They're hungry, they're thirsty, they're scared, they are upset, they are lonely, and I have sympathy for that. I can empathize, and that's what woke is. And so I hope every person in the world strives to be woke. It just means that we care about each other as human beings, that we can look past all of the things that they're telling us to keep us apart or should keep us apart. So yeah, what is Jesus letting go of in this? How? In a lot of ways, yeah. Worldly power. And that's part part of what we talked about last week, when he's in the wilderness, he's tempted by the devil, with his traditional and worldly forms of power, fame and wealth, privilege, prestige. He lets all of that go so that he can fulfill his calling as healer, prophet, and savior. Not CEO, president, anything like that. So I love this text, not because it's an easy one to deal with, to preach on, or even to hear, but I like it because it has fox and hen imagery. And most of you know that before I was a pastor, I was a zookeeper. And I was kind of a country boy. So anytime there is imagery like this, it perks up in my mind. I understand this. Occasionally there's some imagery and some parables. I'm like, I can't relate to that. We don't have vineyards in Georgia. I'll take that back. We have Muscadine wine, which is terrible. Don't ever drink Muscadine. It's terrible. But we don't have vineyards like they do in the Holy Land, like we do here. And so when there's parables about vines and vineyards and stuff, I mean, I get it, but I've seen that. But when we talk about foxes and hens, I've seen there's a country people here, right? Who has chickens? I know some have chickens. What does it look like if a fox gets in with your chickens?
Chaos.
Chaos. Yeah, carnage. And we know the collective imagery that we pretty much all share, other than a brief period in the 70s where somebody called you a fox. That was a good thing, right? But generally, a fox is a metaphor for someone or something that's sly, devious, and predatory, cunning, evil, dangerous. The fox is a trickster. The fox takes and consumes. It doesn't give. Nowhere in our stories is the fox generous, compassionate. And I've seen it happen when foxes get into a hen house. Have you had that trouble before?
Not with a fox.
Not with a fox, but yeah, when predators get in there, it's
A weasel.
a weasel, same thing. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't leave the hens, chickens in good shape. And so Jesus called Herod a fox. Not because Herod's good looking during the 70s, but it's not a compliment. Jesus is calling Herod someone who's devious and cunning, somebody who should not be trusted, somebody who's not interested in the welfare of others, who's definitely out for his own profit, and his own power, and his own skin, no matter the cost. Our minds probably go to current affairs. The fox takes advantage of others for personal gain. Fox uses power to intimidate and threaten, instills fear, and wants people to capitulate and do what they're told. It's tempting to go on a mini sermon about fox in our society, in our media here. But we see this all around. We see fox behavior all around, so much so that we have to actually work to not be foxes in our world. We see people taking advantage of others so frequently that hardly bad enough. We call it the economy and the workforce. We see people preying on other people through policies and practices that cause harm and disruption and strip families and break them apart. We see this steady environment, this cultivation of fear and intimidation that is really bad right now. And it's fox. It's how the fox operates. We're surrounded by the fox reality. And it's really hard to recognize it. I mean, right now, it's not hard to recognize it because the fox is really empowered, but even most of us are raised with an economic model that it's poor, we're really honest, is actually built on, at its lowest level, taking advantage. Good business people find a way to save money and reduce the bottom line so that they or others, investors, can make money, but there's always a cost, and that cost comes down. That's Fox thinking. There's another image. Jesus refers to a hen. Jesus looks at Jerusalem, the holy city, and says, how often I desire to gather your children together as the hen gathers her brood. Has anyone seen what happens when a hen has chicks in like a hawk shadow over there? They spread out. They get them and they cover them. And that image of the hen with its wings outstretched, with the ticks tucked underneath, implies protection, security, safety, nurture, care. The hen doesn't prey on the young. The hen looks after the chicks because they're precious, they're beloved, they're valuable and vulnerable and frail. And each one of those little chicks is a life deserving of protection. So we have the fox vision of the world, we also have the hen vision of the world. The hen vision of the world is a world where everyone is one and included and valued, cared for. The hen world is a society where compassion is the norm. And there's special sensitivity, given to all prayer. When you think about how we often look at and treat children, older adults, and others in our society, it's not hard to see that at times we lean a lot more towards the fox than the hen. In this passage, and in fact, in all of his ministry and his teachings and just his very presence, Jesus is inviting everyone, regardless of gender, regardless of nationality, religious background, to live in a hen. It's an alternative to the fox way of living. We're not stuck where everyone has teeth and claws and are using it to fight and scrap over every last little thing and to battle each other. Jesus offers a different vision where allegiance isn't to ourselves, but to peace and love and common good. Notice that Jesus didn't win people over by threats, and intimidation, and manipulation, or violence. People came to Jesus, connected with Jesus, followed Jesus, lived for Jesus, sometimes died for Jesus, because he came to them with food when they were hungry, with healing when they were hurting, with forgiveness, with mercy, solidarity. That's the hen way of living. So today, as we spend time with Jesus in this powerful place, what are we being asked as individuals and as a brand new faith community? What are we being asked to do? Pardon? To be faithful. Faithful to a particular way of living that looks different than how a lot of society. Is there anything else called to cultivate? Pardon? Generosity. Giving rather than. Inclusion. Sorry?
Inclusion.
Inclusion. That's right. Circle that holds everything. And what are we being asked to let go?
We've always had.
Yeah, yeah. We seem to come back to that a lot. We can say that probably every Sunday. We've always done it that way, impulse. Anything else? Pardon? Intolerance. Yeah.
Being territorial.
I'm sorry.
Being territorial.
Being territorial or tribal. Yeah. Oh,
Fear. Yeah, no.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's an interesting one, and an important one. Fear of accepting and moving into the unknown. I think one of the things that we don't talk about enough, and we'll conclude with this, is there wasn't a roadmap for Jesus or the disciples. If they had followed the traditions, none of what happened would have happened. That Jesus stepped outside the traditions and made a way where there was no way. The disciples journeyed with them without knowing what to expect from day to day, week to week, and month. And so, yeah, I think part of what we're being asked to let go of is the same thing that the early disciples, and frankly, probably every disciple along the way, is clear path to tomorrow. We know who to follow, even if we don't know exactly where. So join me in prayer. Lord, this is a powerful and a tough one, and if we are honest, it hits close to home because, well, there's a lot of foxes out there. And some of them are easy to point at, and some of them are very sly and out, but we know we need to stand up and call out when we see a fox, but we don't know what to do. And if we don't know what to do, at least we know how to do it. Whenever we figure out how to resist the foxes in this day, in this time, we know that we can't become foxes. That we must answer tooth and claw with compassion for the weak and the vulnerable. And so we thank you, God, for the gift of Christ who shows us a new way to live and empower each of us and us together to understand what that means for us here today. We pray. Amen.